Welcome back to my Commodore 64 Games Memories video series. This is where I look at old games and some of the technical details behind them. Today we have Scramble Infinity, released in 2021 by 5 O'Clock Software. Now I realise that this is not an old Commodore 64 game, but it's still for the Commodore 64, and I really wanted to have a look at this because it's technically rather interesting. So yes, if you like these kind of technical deep dive videos, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel or sending me a super thanks. They are all always very much appreciated. I love this piece of directory art that's in the original disk image. There doesn't seem to be an auto bootloader or anything like that. It's just doing what looks like a kernel load. We just have a sys2061 to start this. It's doing quite a lot of decompression. Now I really like this loading intro screen. We can see that there's something special about it, right? The side borders seem to be open for the spaceship's wings. The bottom and top borders also seem to have some graphics in there as well. Let's just double check this. So we can see where the sprites are because they have these red bounding boxes. There's definitely a sprite there in the left-hand side border. There's another sprite there in the bottom right-hand corner in the right-hand side border. And then we've got a whole bunch of sprites down in the bottom border. And of course, we've got the top part of the Scramble logo as sprites in the top border. So this is kind of like an extended screen mode, or expanded screen mode, if you like, where the screen is expanded beyond its normal border area. We can see that there's some sprites here. It displays the Ready Joy 2, moving the raster beam targeting cursor up and down the screen. We can see roughly where the code is being scheduled to open the side borders for the sprites. We'll look at that in slightly more detail in a minute. The timing for the middle part of the screen, which is like the scrolling message, is interesting. And also the timing here for the color changes for the sprites is also quite interesting. It generates quite a nice little graduated fill or effect in the sprite definitions. However, the middle part here, the Y positions seem to be updated very early, which kind of confuses the red bounding box display for the sprite debugging portion in C64 debug GUI. As soon as it looks like as soon as the sprite starts to be displayed, then its Y position is updated. But of course, the way that the logic works in the VIC chip is that once a sprite has been started to display at its Y position, then you cannot really update the Y position that much. There are certain little tweaks that you can do with expanded vertical sprites and stuff like that, but generally speaking, once it's started drawing a sprite at a Y position, it will just keep on doing it, except in very rare circumstances where you can tweak it a little bit. But you can change the X position. It's just that the Y position is quite set. So if you update the Y position as the sprite has been rendering, then you can make the sprite start rendering at its new Y position very quickly. So you can reduce the gap doing that. You can preload the Y position register, and then you have one fewer register to update in terms of the X and the color and the sprite definition and stuff like that. Let's have a look at the timing for the code in a little bit more detail. Here on this line with the targeting cursor, we can move the timing and right, okay, so the CPU is actually not updating at this point because we have a great big bad line, and then just as the bad line ends, the CPU executes those store instructions to D016. This is where the screen mode is changed from 38 columns to 40 columns, which does the side border internal VIC flag tweak, which basically tricks the VIC into thinking that it should be displaying graphics sprites, in this case, in the side borders by opening up the side borders. So those pairs of stores are precisely timed to happen after that bad line, and then after that, then they are precisely timed to happen here. So you can see that it looks like the code is going to trigger early, right? But then we get on to the next line, and the CPU has been stunned by this bad line coming along, which of course takes up all of the time from the CPU, so the CPU doesn't have any time, and then it just triggers at exactly the right point there. Having a sprite active as well in the side border also helps with this timing. And then once the side border is opened, you need to update the side border. Well, you need to do the side border tweak every raster line on the same cycle, basically. And that's what those pairs of stores there, 2D016, do. You can see actually that the scroll is also changing. That's why the screen is shifting around as well. The X flying pixel scroll changes. So we can see pretty much exactly that the store always completes right there, and then it restores the screen mode. So the thing I love about this intro screen is the polish and the attention to detail that goes into using the available sprites with the colors to overlay the bitmap to extend outside the normal area of the screen. I think the polish is really fantastic on this. I mean, it's not incredibly hard code to do. I mean, the timing on it is very precise, but it just looks really lovely, doesn't it? And I really do appreciate the extra work and effort that went into this. Then we look into the drive code that's running, and we can see that we're just running a very small tight loop there with the drive code on the right hand side. The drive is just waiting for a trigger from, or a signal from, the Commodore 64. Let's unpause this and carry on running. We've got some lovely music in the background, but we can see, look, wow, there's a ton of sprites over a screen. Might be bitmap, might be text screen. We'll have a look at that in a second. But of course, we've got the Scramble logo, the top sprites there. We've got a whole bunch of sprites down in the bottom border. We also have the sprites, and this is the game. So I've got cheat mode on in the game, so don't get confused if I go flying through the background there. That's because I want to concentrate on the technical aspects and not worry about dying. So once these rockets launch from the level in the game, they turn into sprites and the graphics are removed from the scrolling background. Now, I happen to know that the scrolling background is a bitmap screen, but we'll have a look at that in more detail in a short while. But the background looks really colourful, doesn't it? And that's what gave me the first hint that it was a bitmap screen, even before looking at it in any kind of like debugger or anything. It was pretty obvious that the colourful nature meant that it was a bitmap screen. The huge amount of variation going on in the background is great. Now we have these wonderful sprites up in the top border here, and we can see that at this Y position, actually all of the X positions for the sprites get updated, and this means that we can have more variation in the horizontal, the way that the sprites fill the horizontal area in the top border, is because the ship and the stage number or lives or whatever it is in the top right hand corner appear there, and then we've got these numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 being highlighted, and they're stuck in the middle of the top border. So updating the X positions halfway down during the vertical draw position of the sprites actually changes the horizontal position. Now looking at the bitmap debug view here, we can see very clearly that once the bitmap starts drawing, we have this wipe effect going from left to right. So it wasn't actually scrolling bitmap data, of course. Now, if you remember, if you go back to one of my older videos on fast bitmap scrolling, then it's going to be an effect which is somewhat contentious a little bit in some circles, because maybe on some Commodore 64s and the actual proportion of C64s that were affected with this is in doubt. But basically on some C64s it doesn't like using this VSP effect, which is the variable screen position effect, where you're basically doing like a DMA delay, and that's what it's called. But basically you're tricking the VIC chip into going into the display mode during the middle of the top scan line. And what this causes is that it causes the VIC chip to fetch a different number of character rows for the scan line. And this basically horizontally scrolls the entire screen from 0 to 39 characters when you switch on the bad line fetch halfway during that scan line. And it makes the screen scroll without needing to scroll all of the data. And that's how this game is able to utilize this effect to scroll the bitmap without doing too much in terms of updates. So we can see how many sprites are actually active during the whole game. We've got what looks like obviously multiplexed sprites going on in the game display as well. We can see this draw coming in. Look, you can see it very clearly there. The vertical left to right wipe, if you like, across the screen. Just drawing new data coming in. Now, we can see that there's a whole bunch of areas in memory being written to, and there's an area of memory being sequentially written to backwards and then read sequentially forwards. My gut feeling tells me that this is of course going to be the background data that's being streamed in from disk. And if we guess that it looks like the backwards written data is being streamed in as the forward sequential reading data moves over the point that was just loaded. So once, see, there we go, we can expect to see there that purple there was a whole bunch of writes, and it was probably coming in from the disk. Yeah, we can see that the disk, watch here, in the bottom right hand corner, there we go, there's a whole bunch of drive code running. The drive becomes active, reading and writing the sector or block data there. There we go. So the purple area there is written block data. The drive code is active, and then on the Commodore 64 view there on the left, we can see the reverse backwards, if you like, purple write into memory. So it looks like there's two chunks of memory. One is a chunk of memory being read sequentially forward or ascending in memory, and that's drawing, I expect, the background data. But then once one buffer is being read, then the other one, of course, is not being accessed by the C64, so the drive code can then start decompressing backwards data into that memory. So we've got kind of like a round robin or two buffers here, one being read and being used during the screen render, and then the other one just data being pumped into it from the drive code, and then the buffers swap over. We can see that the bitmap is not double buffered usually while it's smooth scrolling, and that's because it's using the DMA delay effect for horizontally scrolling in terms of 8-pixel jumps or character cell jumps. But when we get to the edge of the screen, we need to flip to the next bitmap. So we can see that we've got two bitmaps in memory, and those are in two different VIC banks. Of course, that means the sprites are going to need to be duplicated across the two different VIC banks as well. We've got this rather nice little, very, very colourful, actually, congratulations screen, which is a multicolour text screen. And then we go back to the bitmap mode. So most of this game makes use of this bitmap mode, of course. But the reason why this game is really technically interesting is its use of the horizontally scrolling bitmap mode, plus the game level data, which seems to be streamed in from the disk. We also have some bitmap formatted data at that area in memory there. I'm just overriding the bitmap display start address there, and we can see that there's a whole bunch of block graphical data. So I don't think this is being updated. I think that's just the maximum number of characters available in for the whole level. We'll have a look at this in ICU C64, I think, because ICU C64 allows us to view simultaneously different areas in memory, and we can actually see in more detail what is being updated and where. I've set up two sprite graphics map views there, one at 4000 and one at C000 in hex, and that shows that we've got two identically mapped banks of sprites there. We also have two bitmaps. So I've paused the game so we can see that we're partially drawing the bitmap. And if you carefully notice, the bitmap on the left is one character row higher compared to the bitmap on the right. And that's because once you horizontally DMA delay scroll the screen for the bitmap, you need to swap to the other buffer, which is a character row above. So basically you switch to the other buffer and then you continue on the scroll, because as you scroll it to the right, it reintroduces the next character row down on the right hand side as it scrolls over from the left to the right hand side. The screen wraps around, so you need to have this one block level or one character row level variation, and then you just need to keep on switching that over in the screen, so you need to keep track of that. So looking at the color RAM usage, it looks like the color RAM never gets updated. It looks like the color RAM just contains color C, which is one of the grays. If I fill the color RAM with, I filled the wrong memory range. Whoops, let's reload that. So loaded it back again, and let's fill the correct range in memory now for the color RAM. Now, don't forget, in bitmap, multicolor bitmap mode, there is a character screen, which is used for two of the colors, and then the color RAM colors are used for the third color for the character cells. You have multicolor 1, multicolor 2, and you have the third multicolor variation for each character cell. So that's why the bitmap screen has the bitmap character cell data, which is about 8 kilobytes. And then you have the around about 1 kilobyte for the character screen, which is colors in this case. And then you have the 1 kilobyte, which is basically 40 by 25 character cells of 4-bit values in the color RAM. So there's actually quite a lot of data that the VIC chip is pulling in, but it's just pulling in that data. So we know now that if we fill the color RAM with a pattern, or if we fill it with a different color like F, which is very light gray, then we can see from the memory event view there that there's no color RAM writes going on during the scroll. And of course that's okay, because there's still enough color variation here, and there might not have been quite enough time to update everything in terms of the color RAM and everything like that. So it's quite understandable, I think. If I eject the disk, then you can see that the level data cycles around, and then if I reinsert the disk again, then the drive code recovers, and then it's populating new data into that kind of like 2 buffer area. So then the level starts rendering again kind of correctly, although the whole game has got out of sync a bit. You're not really meant to yank out the disk from the drive, right? Again, I've got cheats on, so don't worry about that. That's why I'm flying through the background. I think at this point in the game you're meant to destroy the reactor right at the end, right? That's why. There we go. So yeah, it does get a little bit confused when you take out the disc, but yeah, I just really love the the technical details that go into this game, which introduces a whole bunch of great graphical variation during the gameplay. Let's put back the color pattern. You can see, I don't know, does it improve the game if we had extra graphical? Maybe kind of like would, but anyway. But yeah, I just really love the technical polish and the graphical variation that goes into this game. I love the fact that it's used this quite relatively difficult to manage horizontal scroll method, the DMA delay horizontal scroll method. Of course, other games did use it too, but not that often. Now this area here, the green reads there, are of course the green reads for the character formatted block data, which, you know, the bitmap screen uses character formatted block data for those character cells, right? So that's what we're seeing there. So when we ejected the disk, we could just see that it was just the map for the game that was repeating. It wasn't changing anything else to do with the blocks. So I think we'll leave this video there. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to for this game, especially the technical details on how it's streaming level data as it's doing that DMA delay horizontal bitmap scroll. It definitely shows how you can scroll the bitmap in a game and still have a real game going on, and you can scroll the bitmap screen actually quite quickly and also stream data at the same time. It's fantastic, and have a multiplexer going on and have the top and bottom borders open as well for extra status display. So thank you very much for watching these Commodore 64 Retro Games Memories videos. If you like this kind of video, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel, or add a comment in the comments section below. I always like to receive feedback from people. As always, I would like to thank my supporters for their donations to this channel. You are my vertically firing rocket to my forward firing missiles and bombs. Take care, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are.